I'll confirm when we're live.
Okay.
We've started.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nick Adams-King. I'm the Executive Member for Hampshire 2050 and Corporate Services, and welcome to my decision day this afternoon, June the 27th. The decision day is currently being webcast live on YouTube via the County Council website. I'd like to welcome my colleague Zoe Huggins and my fellow councillors Martin Todd and Malcolm Wallace, who are here to join in the meeting. And I don't think either Stephen or Rod, who are from the Select Committee, are here this afternoon. We have apologies from Councillor Jan Warwick, who is the Deputy Leader and one of the other Cabinet members in this part of the Council. We've got no deputations and we've got no key decisions, so it's just non-key decisions we're looking at this afternoon. And the first one is the Hampshire Prosperity Partnership Board and Economy and Growth Plan. So I think that's Gary and probably Stephen and Natalie.
Yep, I'm going to pass straight leader to Stephen and Natalie to introduce the paper.
Okay, Gary, thank you. So this paper, I think, essentially does two main things. So the first half of the paper is essentially a concise annual report on economy and skills activity in Hampshire County Council during 2024-25. So that includes the transfer of responsibility for local enterprise partnership functions to the County Council at the beginning of that financial year. It includes the establishment of the Hampshire Prosperity Partnership, headed by the Hampshire Prosperity Partnership Board, that is chaired by yourself, Nick, and which brings together leaders from Hampshire's business community, from other local authorities, from the university and college sectors to work together in partnership to drive sustainable and inclusive growth across Hampshire. It includes the establishment of a single integrated economy and skills team within Hampshire County Council, which incorporated some members of staff who transferred across from Enterprise M3 local enterprise partnership, plus existing Hampshire County Council colleagues. And then the report also sets out very briefly some of the key things that were delivered during 24-25 by those teams. And also includes a section on the funds that were inherited by Hampshire County Council from both Enterprise M3 LEP and Solent LEP, and the income and expenditure relating to those funds during 2024-25 and the year-end balance on those funds. And all of that is for noting. The second half of the report is a draft of a new document called the Economy and Growth Plan. So, as you know, last autumn, Hampshire County Council published an updated economic strategy for Hampshire. And one of the things that we committed to doing in that document was to follow it up with a plan that would be essentially kind of action oriented. So would set out the key actions that Hampshire County Council would be leading during the year ahead in order to implement that strategy. And therefore, the second half of this report is a essentially late draft of that economy and growth plan. The plan covers the period 2025 to 27, though we are proposing to update it halfway through that 2-year period in order to make sure that it stays current. And essentially, it brings together a number of programs that we're already delivering during this period, such as the Growth Hub, the Careers Hub, Skills Boot Camps. It includes a number of new projects or work streams that have come out of discussions we have been having with the Hampshire Prosperity Partnership Board over the last few months about the board's priority, such as, for example, work in the year ahead on helping to develop the creative, digital and life sciences sectors within Hampshire. And it also references a number of other existing Hampshire County Council strategies and activities that play a really important part in contributing to prosperity, such as our work on transport, our work on public health, and so forth. This document is for your agreement. So if you agree to it, we will then finalise it, turn it into a designed document that is suitable for kind of web publication. You are also being asked to delegate authority to the Director of Hampshire 2050 to make any sort of final minor changes that may be needed as part of that process.
Yep. Super, thanks very much, Stephen. Martin is one of my colleagues on the Prosperity Partnership Board, and I know we've talked about it a couple of times, or we've talked about this plan a couple of times. Martin, any comments about this part of the paper?
Yeah, I mean, clearly there's a need to get this plan in place and get it published, and I think what's in front of us is a very helpful step to that. I suppose the challenge that we face, that I think would be a challenge even if we weren't looking at a potential combined authority and establish a mayoral combined authority or strategic authority, is, and I wouldn't want this to hold things up, but I do think it needs to be something that's thought of ongoing, is how do we join up better with the Solent, Portsmouth, Southampton and the Isle of Wight? Because ultimately, you know, the idea that economic activity stops at local government boundaries is obvious nonsense. You know, our biggest university is based in Southampton, although it has footprints in Hampshire. And so I suppose my only request would be that as work goes forward and we're thinking about, you know, is that we use this as a base for finding ways to strengthen our collaboration with the Solent in terms of how this plan is implemented and in planning for the strategic authority and what will presumably then be a combined economy and growth plan for the total region, which I think I suspect the combined authority or the strategic authority will be asked to develop. So I suppose that's my main thought. And I know it's something that we all believe in, but it's just to say, I do think that remains important and something that we should all be working on. Obviously, I've had a chance to input on this as a district leader in our conversations with Portsmouth, Southampton and the Isle of Wight to say, look, come on, you know, how can we be more joined up on this? And we, as you'll know, the last Partnership Prosperity Board, we spent some time talking about that as well. And there was a bit of frustration on the part of the board to say why, you know, how can we better align ourselves with one another? We are putting in place meetings that not only monitor devolution as we go along, but also to talk about how we can better align with this plan with the Solent plan, the Solent Growth Partnership plan, and so on. And those are now going in the diary from next month onwards. It's slightly tricky because of the change of leader that's about to come up in Southampton, and so that won't be confirmed until the 16th of July. But then once Alex is in place, and I assume it will be Alex, who's the Labour nominee, hopefully we can then sort of begin to align things. And I don't think there's no particular tension as such, but I think it's just the fact that the Solent bit, that the two cities in the island have had their particular focus, and they are just concerned that that's not lost in a wider, in a wider plan. And so we need to do something for our side, but I can absolutely reassure you, and as I did with the partnership board, is to say that, you know, we're working together to make sure that we bring those two different plans together, and that there's no tension between them, and there's no that we recognise the overlaps, but we also recognise that there is some difference. But you're absolutely right. There are maritime businesses in the north of Hampshire, as well as many along the Solent,
just as there are IT or defence sector businesses along the coast, as there are many in Northern Hampshire, for example. And so recognising that and making sure that we're across the piece, I think, is the important thing. So that was me answering from a political perspective. I don't know whether any officers wanted to jump in as well, or whether that covered it for you.
I can very briefly, if you want, Nick.
Yeah. Yes, they do, please.
Just to say, we're working very closely with the officers in the 4 upper tier authorities, but as well as the districts, because we've got district reps on all of the policy groups looking at devolution. There is a group specifically looking at economic development and another one looking at skills. One of the first things they've been asked to do is to map all the kind of existing strategies or the existing key work and look for synergies across them, as well as identifying kind of areas of difference so we know where the gaps are. So ultimately, as we kind of progress towards devolution, we're as joined up as we can be, is the intention.
Super, thanks. Sorry, Gary, you popped your hand up as well, but I guess you might be about to say what Natalie said.
Natalie beat me to it, so nothing more to add, Leader.
Yeah, great. Malcolm, any comment?
Yep, I enjoyed reading this report and all the work. I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. I guess I would just ask, what are we not doing that we should be doing going forward? There's a lot in there, but I mean, what else do you think we should be doing? For example, I think by some measures, demand for university graduates is at an all-time low. So is the Hampshire Prosperity Board doing something in that space? Thank you.
So, Stephen, I don't know whether, yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things that we are doing between now and December is producing a new skills strategy for Hampshire. So we haven't done this as a county council. I think the last update to the skills strategy and action plan was 2022, and a lot has kind of changed since then. So one of my team is leading work with partners at the moment to develop an up-to-date skills strategy that takes into account the way the world has changed since then, and also the changes to kind of new government policy as well, including, for example, the industrial strategy that was just published earlier this week. And therefore, I think as a result, there is not as much in this plan yet in terms of some of those kind of key new skills actions as we expect to be in due course. So this is part of the reason why we're proposing to do an update of this plan in probably kind of next spring, because by that point we will have completed our skills strategy. That will pick up the sorts of issues that you've just kind of referred to, and then we can incorporate those into the plan as well. And it's very clear that skills issues are a high priority for the Hampshire Prosperity Partnership Board, so we're certainly kind of doing more work in that area. I mean, I guess I think the other and which comes out with a raft of supporting documents, sector plans, and so forth. But I think in many respects, this plan is already kind of well aligned with that, I think. So the 3 sectors that we've said we particularly want to work on this year, as set out in this plan, which are creative, digital, and life sciences, those are all among the 8 priority sectors of the National Industrial Strategy. But I think, fully understanding the recent spending announcements in the spending review and exactly what opportunities the industrial strategy may offer for our region, and responding positively to those opportunities is also going to be key for the next few months.
Thank you.
I think the one thing I'd say, Malcolm, is that we obviously have an eye to the fact that all of this feeds into what eventually is handed over to the strategic authority, and being as prepared as we can, or helping them be as prepared as they can to hit the ground running once the mayor is elected next year is the important thing as well. And so keeping an eye on all of the various strategies that are going on. There's been some stuff about enterprise zones as well come out today. all of that kind of feeds into what will be quite a complex picture, but one where hopefully that change will enable us to influence things to a much greater extent on a local level than we've ever been able to before. So that would help us. Zoe, anything to add?
No questions, just comment. And again, really welcome it. And just sort of a reflection, this is obviously an annual report, that's the reflection of the work that's gone before us, isn't it, previous. And I think what we need to remember, the first 6 months, we weren't necessarily tied up in conversations of devolution and LGR. That only came in for January. So however, we are less than 12 months now before the possible election of mayor and combined authority or strategic authority. So I think everything that's been said, I would endorse. You know, we really need to now act quickly to make sure those strategies are joined up, because, you know, the movement of people, the sales of goods, our tourism, our culture is not bound by boundaries. So working across our region towards that is really important. And similar to Stephen, it's you know, joining that up to the industrial strategy, which I know I'm an observer on the Prosperity Board, and I do know that we had a talk already about the awaited industrial strategy that I think only was published about 3 or 4 days ago. So Stephen, when you say you've not digested it, I'm pretty impressed that you've managed to already read some of the 100 pages that have already been published just days ago. But I think there's a lot to digest and still a lot of action to take place. And I think, you know, that's where Malcolm's question is very poignant. But, you know, the report is very reflective of where we know we are and where we know we need to go to, and Natalie's comments as well about how we are starting to work that now. So really welcome a fantastic report and good work.
Thanks very much. So the recommendations are in paragraphs 2 to 5 on page 3. I'm very happy to approve those. And I think I just echo Zoe's comments there about thanks so much for all the really hard work, because this has been, if you think back to a year ago when we were establishing all of this, the report really does point to the incredible progress we've made in getting everything up and running, and also within that year, midway through, having to segue into a different future in terms of then having to get something ready for what will come next after next May with the creation of the strategic authority and all the work going on to that. So thanks so much everybody for all of that. So item 2 is transport strategy and scheme development programme. It's on pages 29 to 50, and that's Gary and David, I think.
Yeah, so hand over to David to introduce the report.
Thanks, Gary. So this report is to note the programme of strategy and scheme development work within integrated transport in Hampshire 2050 for the forthcoming financial year. Developing a programme of schemes as part of our adopted local transport plan 4 is a statutory requirement for the council. So just to note that the formal decisions around programme development, prioritisation and spend are all covered under the officer's scheme of delegation. So this report is primarily to raise awareness with the leader and other members of revenue or the revenue programme of transport planning activity underway, and then how this feeds into the capital programme. So the report is really about giving transparency and oversight to that. Apart from our subscription to the sub-regional transport body, Transport for South East, and a small indicative allocation to cover potential work for future funding bids, the programme is entirely funded by external funding, and everything is compliant with legal minimum service levels. Within the main documents, there's a table outlining the programme of strategy and policy work, while Appendix 1 has a full breakdown by district of transport infrastructure schemes in development this year.
Super, thanks so much, David. And no, what's really heartening is to see that we're using our Section 106 money and aligning that with various schemes that we're going to be putting forward. Martin, any comment to make?
Yes, apologies, just unmuting. I had a couple of questions. So one of the things that wasn't clear, and maybe this sits within the scheme of delegation, is how members or district or district partners are involved. Obviously, they will be involved when SIL is involved, but how members are involved in terms of setting the priorities. And I suppose the other thing I had was a sort of reactive point. So I had somebody comment to me about an accident on the A3, a fatal accident on the A337. So how do serious accidents and other such things get factored into the plan? Where is there a kind of two-step process to look at it firstly in terms of traffic management, and how does that work between the two? So I've got a question in terms of how are members involved in all of this. I mean, certainly from my point of view, what was in place made sense for my division, but it wasn't clear from the report how that's done. And then there was a second point about, do we have enough resource in place? It appears that there's a reference in paragraph 12 on page 32 about Hampshire accumulating 12 million a year of section 106. And I suppose my question is, are we spending that 12 million a year? Are we clearing it as fast as it's coming in? And a reference to SIL being a better mechanism because it's more flexible. But again, I suppose the question is, how quickly are we clearing through SIL as it comes in? And are we encouraging other districts to say that actually it's a better mechanism for getting highways improvements? So a couple of process points, one about member involvement, one about do we have the right level of resource to get through the section 106 agreements that are coming in, and manage the SIL that's coming in. And a third one, which relates to, and how do we respond to, for example, emerging or problems with accident black spots?
So there's quite a bit there. David, do you want to answer some of those, or I can talk a little bit about how we monitor section 106 and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm happy to pick through those questions. I think in terms of the kind of district and member involvement, and kind of identifying the programme, we are in constant discussions with district colleagues about the issues and needs and funding opportunities at a local level. We have lots of correspondence as well with members who get in touch to identify issues, and certainly where we do have known funding, so for instance developer contributions from a particular development that have a terms to be used in a certain area, we will then be working with those county councillors to go through the process of kind of identifying interventions. So it's a multifaceted approach of lots of kind of dialogue and stakeholder working to be able to identify in effect a long list of schemes that we might be wanting to do, long list of schemes and strategies, and that all goes through a prioritisation process to basically see which ones are kind of most critical to be doing within that year, particularly where there's funding availability. So there's not one single answer to that, but yeah, lots of dialogue from my team and wider officers at the county council with members. The point around where things come up in year that might be, as your example, that sometimes pressing safety issues come up. The programme isn't entirely fixed. It's not static. It is a fluid programme where needs come up and issues arise through the course of the year. We will work within our scheme of authorisation to prioritise different projects where need be, again in close kind of dialogue with relevant kind of county councillors and the leader where appropriate. Some of that might mean that some of the projects that are in the programme might have to be slowed down and resources kind of moved on to other bits. But we're obviously kind of mindful of where we kind of got constraints around timescales and particularly funding. So it's a constant balancing piece to balance these 100+ projects according to those kind of different criteria. Your second question now, Councillor Todd, apologies, I have forgotten what it was.
It was about how we're doing in terms of, are we spending section 106 as quickly and SIL as quickly as it's being generated, I suppose was my last question. And I've got the other question, which is, I realise is an extra question, so I apologise for slightly cheating the process here. But one of the problems with section 106 is it's quite retrospective, and it's quite a complicated process to make sure it's delivering LTP for an active travel priority. So I suppose the other question is there a kind of drag in trying to get the kind of schemes we actually need based on our current strategy in place and implemented? And have we got the right are the districts making the right planning decisions and the right 106 agreements to deliver the more enlightened agenda in LTP4? But so two things really. One is, are we clearing all the 106 and SIL? And the second thing is, have we got what we need to make sure that those 106s are doing what we want them to be doing in line with the new strategy?
Yeah, so so the last 3 years, I think we've spent more Section 106 than we've received. I think just the numbers are around certainly the last 2 years we've spent over 20 million of Section 106 against about 15 million received, 16 million received. And I think we're on trend this year to be spending more than we receive as well. The terms, in some instances, some of the Section 106 terms probably don't fully align with the new LTP4 policies, because they were, as you point out, potentially agreed 10 plus years ago. Where we do have scope to focus on particularly kind of walking and cycling schemes within a kind of particular location, we will do that within the Section 106 terms. In some instances, we might look at doing deed of variations on those Section 106s to give us a bit more flexibility around spend. For instance, if something was entirely around increasing highway capacity, which is maybe not fully aligned now with LTP4, we would look to how we might use those Section 106 contributions, how best they align with our kind of existing policy. But it's a bit of a balancing act.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just to reassure you as well, we take a look at least every couple of months at the Section 106 contributions that are held and how they're being used, and keep a watching brief by way of a little sort of subcommittee of 2050. Jan and Zoe and I checking that the money is being spent and watching for any money running out, so that we are, or getting close to running out, so that we're making sure that we are using absolutely every penny. And obviously, you kind of alluded to the issue of SIL versus Section 106. much of that actually depends upon the planning policies of the individual councils, to be honest with you. And there are still a couple of the individual district and borough councils, there are a couple of planning authorities that still don't collect SIL, foremost amongst which is Hart. And so we are always looking at Section 106 schemes in those areas. But it is, you're right, SIL gives you much greater flexibility, but much of that then depends upon the amount that you can collect, sorry, how SIL versus Section 106 is applied to different schemes and how large they are and so on.
And just for clarity, you touched on expiry. I mean, we're not losing Section 106 because they run out?
No, very small amounts. It's something that we started doing when I was doing highways a couple of years ago, to just make sure that we weren't losing any, because that was it wasn't at that point completely clear that that was the case, and we've been able to reassure ourselves that we don't. There may be very small amounts that run out of time, but we're talking of a few £1,000s as opposed to very large, tens or hundreds of thousands. So
yeah, thank you.
Malcolm.
Yeah, just picking up on that point, I know we've had some concerns raised recently about some 106 expiring, a few tens of thousands, and this is the wrong forum to go into the details of that, but I know that as part of the mitigation, Universal Services agreed to develop an S106 dashboard that can be accessed by members, so that we can have up-to-date information on contributions received in each area, along with a proposed pipeline of proposed highways and transport schemes that might meet the criteria for the S106 contribution that was originally taken. Can you provide us an update on that? And I've got one other question as well, but perhaps we'll deal with that one first.
So I'm not sure that we've got the right team in the room to be able to help you with that, Malcolm. I might have to come back to you. Gary? I don't know whether you...
Yeah, I was just going to say, Nick, it's a question relevant to another executive member and director. So, Councillor Wallace, we'll take that offline and get a written response back to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so my other question was on paragraph 28 of the report. I was a little surprised to see a statement in there that that the 10% reduction in traffic by 2030 is not a target. This confused me a bit because obviously we've got LTP4, our local transport plan, which says that 10% reduction in traffic. It's littered throughout the report. And in fact, it says a 10% reduction in car use in Hampshire is required between 2019 and 2030 if we are to remain on track to deliver our climate change targets. So that's what it says in LTP4, that we need to do a 10% reduction in our car use if we're to remain on track with our climate change target. So I was surprised here to say, well, we don't need to do it. It's not really a target. So I'm a bit confused as to what it is. I mean, we seem to be either, have we given up on our climate change targets? I know that's probably a gross exaggeration.
It certainly isn't. I think the challenge that we face, and I think the one, obviously we are now in a very different environment to the one that we were maybe 2 or 3 years ago, not least because we're going to have to, in many places, increase the amount of house building that we're undertaking by large proportions against the original local plans, 100% in New Forest and 78% in Test Valley. And as a consequence of that, I think we need to just reassess with the government's drive for growth how and if we can continue to maintain those original targets alongside what is going to happen to Hampshire over the next 10 to 15 years if we're to meet what the government now requires of us, or the new government requires of us, versus the situation that we were in when we actually approved LTP4, which was a couple of years ago now. So it is a challenge in terms of the changing environment, I think. So that's my political answer. I don't know whether officers would like to add to that in terms of how the landscape is changing. Or possibly not. So no, I mean, I think that's our challenge, it's one that we just need to keep a watching brief on and do absolutely everything we can, because we want to encourage people to use public transport. We want to improve public transport, and devolution gives us a great opportunity to do that. And obviously all of that then fills into our plan. But if you are increasing the amount of population by the extent to which we are now going to be asked, you have to offset that, I think, against the potential, the practical ability to reduce transport if if you're actually increasing the number of people who are going to be living in the area. Martin wants to come in.
Well,
yeah, sorry, I thought it was a very good point raised by Malcolm. I think what this suggests is that maybe there needs to be more thought about the linkage between development and transport infrastructure, and we need to be taking an even harder line on Section 106 and the demands we make of SIL as new large-scale developments come forward, because that this scale of these housing numbers are not going to be done by infill. And I think it will be really important for the county or its successor transport authority to be putting in place the toughest, hardest, most demanding requirements it can in terms of how much of that movement can be shifted to active travel and public transport. So it may not be something that can be answered right now, but I'd agree with Malcolm in terms of saying that it's a goal that we absolutely should not be giving up on, and indeed we should be accelerating it. But that interaction between our planning policies and how we're executing is going to be quadruply important as we go forward.
Yeah, I know, I don't disagree with you, Malcolm. Sorry, we got across you.
I just want to be clear. I don't think you're saying we're giving up on our 2050 goal, are you?
No.
Good.
No,
good.
no.
That's good to hear. But we're just giving up on their short-term goal to achieve the 10%
We're-
reduction by 2030?
We're not giving up on any goals, I think, Malcolm, is the answer, but we equally have to be pragmatic and realistic about how the landscape is changing, and reassessing what is achievable is, I think, the best that we can do at the moment. Not least because with the changes of devolution, actually the responsibility for much of the public transport piece, and also the point that Martin was just making about the implementation of schemes that are highway schemes that are and infrastructure schemes that are attached to large-scale development will be either the responsibility of or highly influenced by the combined authority, by the strategic authority. And so I think it would, what I would be keen that we don't do is fail to be transparent or honest about our ability to meet a target and then just get to 2030 and shrug our shoulders and go, oh, we've not been able to make it. I think we're better to keep a watching brief, and to adjust as we go along. And things are changing enormously at the minute. So that's kind of where we are. Sorry, Gary, you wanted to come in, but
no, I was just going to kind of wrap up this point around the 10%. So that's the trajectory along a trend line. I think it's in a way and we'll take this on board. It's relatively kind of unhelpful binary language around that. And I think, Leader, you've been very clear around just, I think, reassuring everyone that 2050 target is still there. That commitment around a trajectory to reduce car use and vehicle numbers by 2030 is still there. And I think it's just unfortunate wording in the report, and we can absolutely take that away, Councillor Wallace, and clarify it outside of the meeting.
Thank you.
yes. Zoe.
Yeah, my main point was obviously our climate change target still remains as 2050, but it's those steps that support our goals towards 2050. And Gary, I think, if we can reflect on some language, but I think more importantly, what it demonstrates in the conversation is the importance of this report and those programmes and the interlink between other strategies. So we've mentioned climate change, health strategy and planning, but all of these are an important part of informing both ways of those strategies. So yeah, I think the interlink of all of those are really important, that they inform each other. It's not just a one-way thing. So yeah, thank you.
Super. Okay. If there's no other comment, the recommendations are in paragraph 2 and 3 on page 29. I'm very happy to agree those. And obviously, Malcolm, we'll come back to you with the updates on the two different things that you asked about there. And I know that we're also just looking into the issue about 106 that was raised yesterday by one of your parishes, which we're going to just go through too. So item 3, possibly slightly less controversial, is the adoption of the Cranbourne Chase National Landscape Management Plan. So I guess that's Gary and Emma.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, Leader, members, officers. Yes, hopefully less controversial. So this item is about national landscapes, formerly known as areas of outstanding natural beauty. The County Council has 2 statutory duties in respect of national landscapes. The first is to review, prepare and publish management plans every 5 years. And we discharge that commonly through National Landscape Partnership Boards. And the second statutory duty is to approve and adopt those management plans in our capacity as local authority. So it's that second statutory duty that we're here for today. So today's decision is about the Cranbourne Chase National Landscape. 7% of that national landscape strays into Hampshire. The majority is in Wiltshire with a little bit in Dorset. So the Hampshire area, just to orientate you, is in the New Forest, in the Damerham and Martin area of the New Forest. We're seeking approval of the 2025 to 30 management plan, and DEFRA have asked or instructed, in fact, that this is a light touch review of the management plan. The engagement with officers, members and the public is set out in paragraphs 15 and 16 of the report, and the key changes to the management plan in the context of that light touch review are contained within paragraph 19. I can confirm that the finance, so the contribution from the Hampshire County Council budget is according to a financial mechanism, an agreed mechanism with the partnership board, and the costs are met by existing budgets. There is existing budget to cover the cost. And the recommendations in the report are that the County Council approves, adopts and approves for publication the management plan, and then delegates authority for any minor tweaks to that management plan in advance of that publication to officers. Thank you.
Super, thanks. Emma, a very beautiful corner of the county, but it is a corner.
Very beautiful indeed.
Very beautiful indeed, but just to the northwest of Fordingbridge. Martin, know it well?
I confess to not knowing it well, and actually I ended up going onto the internet to try and find a map so I could actually understand how much of it was in our area and where it was. And that might be something to consider next time one of these reports comes forward, because it is only 6.7% of the entire area is in Hampshire, and the rest of it's in Wiltshire and Dorset. And ultimately, because I believe in localism and I can see that local members have been consulted, I don't really have anything to add. I mean, it feels like a sensible thing to agree, and who are we to argue with, frankly, Wiltshire and Dorset on this one, since most of it sits with them. So probably the most useful thing we can do is be good neighbours and help them get on with it.
Indeed. Malcolm?
No additional comments from me either. Thank you.
Thanks. Zoe?
No additional comment from me.
Okay. In which case, the recommendations are in paragraphs 2 and 3 on page 51. I'm very happy to approve those, and if you haven't been there, go, because it is a very lovely little corner of the county, and do that. So our final item, I think it's our final item, item 4, is appointments to outside bodies. So Louise, can I just check? I've got to read everyone out.
On paragraph 2, where it's the local interest bodies, unfortunately, you do need to read all of them out. The partnership bodies are within your gift, so they are published as they are current. So it's just that table is just for you to approve.
Great, thanks. Sorry, Gary, did you want to introduce this other than to say there are a list of names?
I have no further introduction beyond. I think the report is clear. The recommendations are clear. You can see the list of names in the various tables.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got the two different lists. One is the partnership boards, where we've got that list in our papers, and hopefully that's all quite straightforward. I think that is complete in the respect that there isn't anybody else that we need to add to it. Except, sorry, just to say, I think we've got to appoint somebody else to Hyola, because Adrian Collett obviously has left the council now, but I think we're waiting for a confirmation from them whether it needs to be a politically proportionate appointment or not. Martin, do you happen to know that? Or
I don't know the answer to that. I was going to say that if it is politically proportionate, then Tim Groves is willing to take that role, but I don't know if you can agree that conditionally. And then the other one that's marked in red, which was a position held by Dominic Hiscock.
Yes.
On so Councillor Ferguson is happy to take that role. I had asked that our leader send you those names, but I can verbally report that if that's something that's okay to be decided in this meeting.
Super. Okie. Well, let me just run through that list, and then of all of the local interest bodies. So the Anvil Trust, which is in Basingstoke, is Councillor Still, Elaine Still. Community Rail Partnership, Barry Dunning. Farnborough Aerodrome Consultative Committee, Rod Cooper. Fluid Motion Theatre Company, Gavin James. Forest Forge Theatre Company is Michael Thierry. Gilbert White's House and the Oates Collection Trustees, Mark Kemp G. These are all effectively bodies that are local to everyone's division. Kings Barton Development Forum has Jan Warwick, Martin, Todd, and Jackie Porter, and it did have Dominic Hiscock, who has stood down from the council. We did think it might be Paula, but we've not had that confirmation from the leader of your group, Martin. But I'm very happy that if we approve that on the basis that we get that provisionally on the basis that he could just confirm.
Sorry, I apologise. I had asked him whether I should email you and copy him or send it directly in.
Yeah.
But it is. I can tell you that the group nomination for that role is Paula Ferguson.
It's Paula Ferguson.
So
we'll add Paula Ferguson. It makes sense that it's Paula because it was previously Dominic. So yeah, that I'm sure is fine. Langstone Harbour Board, Lance Quantrill. North of Whiteley Development Forum, Joanne Burton and Malcolm, and with Anne Briggs as a deputy. Play to the Crowd, Jan Warwick. Proteus Theatre Company Board, Gavin James. Queen Elizabeth II Barracks Transport Contribution Steering Group, Bill Withers. Red House Museum, Fran Carpenter and Barry Dunning. Spring Arts and Heritage Centre, Lulu Bauman. St Barb Museum Trust, Barry Dunning. Thames Basin Heaths Special Protection Area Joint Strategic Partnership Board, Jonathan Glenn. Wellborn Community Forum, Peter Latham, and the deputy would be Pamela Bryant as well, please. Wellesley Residents Trust is Alex Crawford. West of Waterlooville Forum is Anne Briggs. I think we need to appoint somebody else to that, which I will check, but I wonder whether it should be Patricia Stallard because it forms part of her division. And the Winchester bid is Jan Warwick. I apologise for a very long list of bodies and names, but I'm very happy to approve all of those. And it's been to be fair to Keith Martin, there have been a lot of these flying around for each of the decision days with lots of different names for lots of different bodies that everyone's got to point to, as we have to do each year. So I think that's what I need to do with that, isn't it? And that's the recommendations approved and everyone appointed.
It was just to approve the local interest bodies, the partnership bodies, and to agree to no longer appoint to those bodies listed in paragraph 6.
Yes, and we've agreed cross-party that the bodies in paragraph 6 either no longer meet or no longer need, or we no longer need to participate in from a county council perspective. So that's all straightforward. In which case, I think that concludes this decision day. Thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy Prague, Martin, and I
did my best.
I'll just stop the webcast.
And enjoy your weekend.
See you later.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.
Well done. Thanks so much.